What do you anticipate in terms of regulations actually being imposed by governments abroad and especially here on these companies because of concerns about the last election being repeated this time around? You're thinking about this already.
Yeah, well, I think one of the problems, I am worried about, because the social media companies have dropped the ball on getting at some of issues like foreign interference, that then the governments are going to overreach, right, and really have an impact on free speech online. And we are seeing that around the world, where that the governments are then saying, well, all right, Facebook isn't able to clean up its mess, so therefore they're going to pass real, whether it's viewpoint-based discrimination or something else like that. So I am concerned about that. At the risk of getting too complicated here, all the different areas of law that regulate the internet intersect with each other. So whether you're talking about antitrust, you're talking about privacy, or if you're talking about these content moderation issues, I actually think Europe may be the tail that wags the American dog here a little bit, and so the decisions that Marietje makes is going to be very important.
What are those decisions, Marietje? Where are you going with this? Yeah.
Well, we also have elections, and the concerns are actually very, very similar. And what we see is that a number of these social media companies are now coming out with some initial measures of, for example, making transparent who is buying political ads. Well, hallelujah. That should not be rocket science, frankly. I mean, if you want to put an ad in a newspaper, it should be identifiable as an ad, not as a report. And if it's a political message, I believe, especially also here in the US, you get some kind of notification that this is approved by, I don't know, the super PAC of whichever side. And so this kind of transparency, I believe, is a first step, but it doesn't even begin to touch on the impact of the business models and the algorithms that I mentioned earlier that we don't know enough about. Mm-hmm. So I believe algorithmic accountability will be coming. And I also believe that this exemption from liability that I briefly mentioned to you is going to come under a lot of pressure in both the US and the EU because it simply doesn't add up anymore.
One thing I see most immediately is that a bunch of the major companies desperate to avoid regulation are going to be ever more aggressive in their content moderation in the hopes that somehow that will stave off the regulators. And I think that effort's going to fail. But nonetheless, that's what we're going to see immediately. What I would like to see, or one of the things I worry about, is that we're going to have regulations proposed here and abroad that are going to backfire in the sense not just that they might be too heavy-handed and shut down certain kinds of speech, but also that may be difficult to comply with. And what that's going to mean is that only the big companies like Facebook, like Google, can afford to comply with whatever the new regulations are and put in place all the filtering mechanisms or whatever that they have to. And that means we're going to be stuck with only Facebook and Google, for time immemorial. Like, I want the next Google, I want the next Pinterest, I want the next YouTube, I want all 1,000 flowers to bloom so that people can really choose between more and less moderated forums. But you can only do that if you actually have those choices out there.